listening to the Community Link Crew on GFM 96.6. Tell your friend, tell a friend. 96.6 GFM.
Now, tonight we are talking about the GFM Survival Campaign. Now, a lot of people out there seems to be some confusion about town, and people stop me and say, is it true you're closing down? Is it true this is? And what it's all about, we are trying to be prepared. You know, like within your own household, you have certain bills coming up. You either put money aside each week or each month so that when that bill comes, you are ready for it. That's the simplest way I can put this for you to understand. Because what has happened over the years, Ofcom, who issue these community license, have changed how you go about getting a license. Our license will run out. So next January, February, we have to apply to Ofcom for another 5-year license. Now, one of the rules this time around to get a license, when you put in your application form, you have to fill out an application form saying the areas that you cover, what sort of programs will be on your show. You also have to show that you have enough money for at least a year to run a community radio, because it is no point in them issuing you a license and then the next day you can't broadcast, or you can only broadcast for a couple of days because you haven't got the funding. And bearing in mind, you only have to show a year. Really and truly, you need funding for the whole 5 years you're on. But what Ofcom is saying, that when you apply for your license, you need to have in your bank and showing a year's running cost. Now, a running cost is, in our case, would be £24,000, because we have to rent the studio that we broadcast from. We have to rent the studio that we do our training in. We have to pay different sorts of license. For those of you listening on the internet, we have to pay for that. For every music we play, we have to pay, so the P's, we have to pay PPR, performing rights royalties. Then you have some other types of license, which I can't remember off my head now. I should have written it down. But adding it all up, there's the electricity, then, all the usual running costs that you have of a building that you need to pay, your telephone bills, the telephone lines, all that. So when you add that all up for the year, that's £24,000 without anyone picking up a microphone to speak to you or play a record or track. So that is where the £24,000 come from. So that is why we are now saying, letting you aware what is required before we can get another license. And we're not waiting until we put on our license come January, February next year, because then it's a bit late to try and find £24,000. So that's what this is all about, the GFM Survival Campaign. It's working our way with your help, especially if you want to keep us on air, to raise this fund so that we can apply for another license for another 5 years. So when you hear us talking about the GFM needing £24,000, that's why we need it. And like I said, that is just 1 year's running costs. Now, how we've managed in the past to be able to raise the funding is through grants from local authority. And if you are up with what's going on around you, we had people cutting back on most things, and so has funding from local authorities. And when you're a new organisation, anything new, then obviously you get a lot of support, them giving you support that you will then go off and be able to be what they call sustainable. So therefore, there's a lot of funding for new projects. So we're no longer in that category. A couple of years down the line, I don't think they still class us as new. So therefore, a lot of those sort of fundings we're no longer getting. The majority of our money comes in through advertising. So when you hear advertising on the air and you go along, you could be helping us without having to put your hand in your pocket, so to speak, but by saying to whoever has put on the event, whoever's advertised with us, by saying to them, oh, I've come along because I've heard this on GFM, then that person will think, well, it's worthwhile paying to have adverts on GFM. So they will come back to us. So again, you've helped us to raise money without actually paying something out yourself. And these are the ways we're hoping, you will sit back and think of different ways like that to help us. When you hear the adverts, when you hear the job spots that we do, and you go along for the job, make sure you tell them that you heard it on GFM. So then they will start thinking, well, this GFM needs, we need to be using them more. You can write to your local councillors, your MPs, and say, look, we listen to GFM. We want you to help GFM.
GFM. Tell your friend. Tell a friend. 96.6 GFM.